Hi, I'm Dottie Blakesley. I'm chair of the Regional Family Support Planning Council. I just wanted to thank everybody for joining us, and in particular, our panelists, Cathy Tamburello, Susan Coll-Guedes, and Dr. Damian Petino. These people are really, not only do they know their subject matter, but they are just so willing to share and to engage with people. So I do appreciate that. I also wanted to say our purpose is not only to share information, but to hear from you. So if there are issues that you feel the state is not paying attention to, or more people need to weigh in on a certain issue, please find us. You can send an email directly to Kyoko or Carrie. They'll pop their email addresses in the chat, or you can find us on Facebook under, Carrie, what's the Facebook page again? Because I always mess up.
The Family Support Planning, New Jersey Family Support Planning Council.
Yes, thank you. Or you can find us on the New Jersey Council of Developmental Disabilities website. So love to hear from you. Thank you very much. I'm going to pass this over to our panelist, Susan Coll-Guedes.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I'm sorry if I'm a little stuffy. I'm actually very happy that it moved into a webinar so that I could, do this from the comfort of our home. And I'm happy to see everybody join us today. I'm going to share my screen, so bear with me. Oh, Kyoko, it says host disabled participant screen sharing, but you can open my slides. Thank you. Great job. Thanks. I like that there's always a plan B that we that we plan for it. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. My name is Susan Coll-Guedes. I am the chair of Regional Family Support Planning Council number 9, that's Atlantic County, and I'm a visiting professor at the College of New Jersey. And what I want to say first and foremost to the families who are here is that my first title always is that I am mom. And to know that when I think about how we are decoding IEPs and what special education means, I'm coming from that perspective of that we all start in a place of not knowing and just being at level 0, and that this is a possibility that this is a community of people, that we all work together, we help each other. And that you can gain the skills to understand this. And what I'm going to do a little bit today is really talk about how this all started, come from a historical perspective, talk about how we can kind of keep focused on our person, not get lost in all of the details, and try to hold on to the most important things so that this can be really meaningful. I think that it's also important to say and to mention that I am a person with a disability, and I'm a person who had an IEP. And then went to a 504, went to college, and then became the person who trains the teachers, supervises the teachers, and actually goes in and provides professional development so that teachers can do a better job at delivering special education and general education in more inclusive settings. So that's a little bit about me. Next slide, please. So we're going to do a really brief history of special education. And I think it's important to go through this for a reason. My oldest child is now an adult. So we made it through my oldest being born with Down syndrome in the year 2000, all the way now to 2023, where he is an adult and he's transitioned into adulthood. And I want to say that the changes that I have seen in that time are astounding. And so when I teach this history to people who are becoming teachers, to pre-service teachers, I've noticed that not one person has been exposed really to this. And I think that we have to start at the beginning and to know and have that perspective of how far we have come and that it will continue to improve. But a big part of that is advocacy, and for people to learn that that is a skill. So you may be a baby advocate right now, you are attending this meeting, you have this awareness, and that you will grow, and that there's a community of people who will help you. Then I'm going to talk about a little bit about person-centered planning, and it's a framework, and to me, it's a philosophy of we hold that person, the person with a disability, our child, at the center of everything. And how important that is, especially when you are feeling really overwhelmed with this entire process, procedure, and all the rules that go into IEPs. And then really briefly, I'm going to show several different examples of tools and resources that can help you. At the very end of my slide presentation, there's a QR code, and you can take your phone and scan it, and you will have a copy of my slides. So just know, and then at the end of this, I know that everyone's going to be sending slides out in an email, so you will get all of this information. But the spirit of my talk really, and as the opening act, as the opening act for the people who are the latecomers, right? I'm the warm up here. It really is just to put you in a place of knowing that even if you're at the very beginning, even if you are overwhelmed, if you have no idea what's going on, that there are people who have done this before you, and that we are here to help you, and that we are a group that encourages people, and we want this to improve and improve the lives of people with disabilities. Next slide, please. Okay, the right to special education. This is really, really important. I want people to understand in just the most brief way of how far we've come in really just a little bit of a time. Next slide. Because you don't know, right? You really can't know where you're going unless you know where you have been. And I love this quote, because I think too, part of my story, and I've become a little bolder in telling this story, but it's not something that you actually share with people a lot, was that I was adopted, but not adopted right away. When I was born, I was abandoned at birth, and they thought I had Down syndrome. And I went to this in-between place where I was held until they knew if I was adoptable or not. And this wasn't that long ago, right? This is not that long ago. And it hit a little bit different. The story hit a little bit different when I had my son with Down syndrome, and to understand the changes that have happened over time, and how we view people with disability, and how we view people's worth. And that's really a part that is like a passion instilled within me, to know that I've been on many sides of this story, and that it's really important for me that people see individuals with disabilities as individuals first, and that we all work together for the greatest, most positive outcome for people. Next slide. There is no talk about special education. There is no talk about the rights of people with disabilities without having the understanding of the importance of the Brown versus Board of Education. And this was that you cannot segregate by race, that separate is not equal. So really, when we talk about the right to special education, it's incomplete if I don't start with 1954 and that landmark Supreme Court case. Next slide. (1973). This is the Rehabilitative Act of 1973. This is Section 504. So everybody, right? We go, oh, 504 plan, 504 plan. I want you to look at this image and have that understanding of the location, how hard this was for people, and that this was, when people talk about fighting for rights, this is what, when I look at this and I look at what people had to do to just get acknowledged, to acknowledge that we need access. So this is sort of this turning point of acknowledging that people with disabilities have the right to access. And now is when I pose the question, when did the first law come about? I always like to say this to people, the first law that said that we had to educate children with disabilities. Think in your mind, what year could it have been? Next slide. It was 1975. And this is a big deal. When I think about the Education for All Handicapped Children Act, And this is what is called the game changer, right? Which was, and to me, the most important thing that came out of this, a lot of things came out of this, right? Which is the right to access to public education. But the most important thing that came out of this was the zero reject rule. And I think about that and the pain of that, to think about families with their children, and especially as a mom of an adult son now who has Down syndrome, of the pain of going and trying to register your child at school and having the school say that, and it was legal right before 1975, we cannot educate your child, you need to take them home. And that people really had no choice. And when I tell this to people, when I tell this to my pre-service teachers, and I look at their faces and they're really shocked by that. And this was also a piece of where schools could send people away and say, you know, we tried, but there is no place for your child here. And then what were the options for people? So to understand that the history of special education, right? 1954, 1973, 1975, ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, didn't come about until I was in high school. Right. So even me as a person with a disability, to understand that I didn't really get civil rights until I was in high school, to plant that seed and to let you think about that and how much times have changed and society has changed. I'm going to bring this back to 2000, right? So when my son Alex was born, we didn't know he was going to have Down syndrome. And what happened is nobody knew him. Our doctor didn't know, the hospital didn't know. They kind of ran off with him. They ran off with the baby. We didn't know. And they sent people to us, and they sent a mom. They sent a mom to the bedside, and she came and they gave me my baby. And she said to me, nobody here today is going to ask you whether or not you want to bring your baby home. And it really got to my heart. And then she said, my son is 18. And when he was born, they asked me if I wanted to keep him or if I wanted to leave him. And that piece of things, I never forgot it. And it's interesting because in that moment when my son was born, I entered this community, and it's very interesting if you have a person, a loved one with Down syndrome, that it truly is a community where if people see you, they come up to you, and they support you, and they want to know you, and hey, do you know this person? We're all in this like club. We all know each other. And at that moment, I knew that I had crossed into this different world, and that it was going to change me forever. Next slide, please. I show this to my students, and I show it any opportunity that I have, because this is Willowbrook. And I know that not a lot of people have seen this. And I think the history of special education, lack of special education, lack of access, the way that people have seen people with disabilities, I think that it needs to be seen, even though it's really a painful image. And this particular image is from 1972. And what I've known and what I've experienced in my entire journey as an educator, as a mom, as a person with a disability is this, that education transforms people. And that early intervention, and that means, yes, early intervention for babies and toddlers, but also early intervening and offering special education and related services as soon as you can, and having high expectations, that all of those things together can transform lives. But if we give up, if we do nothing, if we set very low expectations for people, that they will meet those low expectations. So this idea of before people had the right to an education, the expectation was that we would send the most disabled away. We would house them, we would clean them, but we wouldn't do much else with them. So I'm really a passionate advocate for special education and for community inclusion and for people to be seen and to really be open and talking about disability. And to know that where we came from, right, that time doesn't exist. It doesn't exist anymore. And that all of our efforts and all of our understanding and the way that we move forward with dignity and offering everybody the proper education that they deserve, all of that will improve lives and transform lives. And what we do now, the people after us will build on that and it will improve again. Next slide. Okay, so how do we do this, right? How do we do this as a mom? I am old enough to have seen when IEPs were handwritten and on one page, right? It didn't have to be this hard. But I could say on the other hand, why is it so hard now? It is so hard now because it's a contract. And everybody wants to make sure, they absolutely want to make sure that if we all agree at this table that the thing that we just talked about, that it's on the paper. We were all agreeing to what's on the paper. So that's why the IEP has kind of gotten into this really big, long, it's a contract, it's a document, it's really, really long. And it's very easy to lose what is the purpose of this. So the part that I'm talking about today really is about how do we hold that individual at the center of this process and not get overwhelmed by 12 people at the table or all these people on a Zoom meeting now, and it feels out of control. Maybe the agenda isn't set by you. Maybe your input isn't asked for in advance. And how do we get this to be a more manageable process? And the way that I think, and the way that I have done this the entire way along for all three of my children who have IEPs, is that at the very center always is, who is this person? Who is this individual? What are their strengths? What are their likes? What do they need to be the best version of themselves? And what often happens with IEPs is that it becomes all the professionals in the room reading reports about deficits and all the things that are wrong and percentile ranks. And then as a parent, it becomes really painful to hear all of that. But when I've noticed, when we can get into this place of and get focused on, let's start here. Let's start with who is this individual before we start talking about all the things that are wrong. Who is this person and what do we see at the end? What do we want for their life? What do we want for their life to look like at the end? How, and then do backwards planning. How are we going to get there? Next slide. Okay, so what in a nutshell, what is person-centered planning? It is a way of thinking about people that respects their interest, their hopes, their dreams, their desires. It's a process, it's a discussion, self-evaluation in which a person discovers how they want to live, right? And how their friends are going to help them. You can have other people joining in. And that's sort of, if I'm going to say, what is a secret to surviving IEP meetings? It is having somebody with you as your support. If you can bring another person in, always, that is what I would recommend. So this is when you start, and I want all the parents here who are on here to know that and value and regard yourself as an expert. There is one person, right? That is you. One person who is going to be there from the time they were born until the time they get all the way out of school, until 21. You are that one person. You are the one person who knows them the best. So when you're doing these IEP meetings and when from very young children until when they're older, and you can bring them in to join in and have their say, to know that you are an expert and regard yourself that way. Next slide. The core principles, and I think that this is really when we talk about empowering parents and empowering the person with the disability who we're talking about here, that this plan is about, is that how you set the agenda. What are the goals, right? With the end in mind. So thinking about meetings, if you get reports ahead of time, if you can get the report ahead of time and go over it ahead of time, that you can then use that very limited meeting time to be more of a discussion rather than people reading to you, right? Brainstorming ideas and talking, hey, is this working? Okay, this is working, what's not working? Use that time, it's right, we have limited time. So use it instead of like listening or going over the evaluations, go over them ahead of time. If you have questions, bring it up then, if you can. talking about not only the things that need to be worked on, but talk about including the strengths and the abilities of your student and your child. And that to know with IEPs that you can have more than one. You don't have to wait until the end of the year to have this IEP meeting. I actually really like having IEP meetings in the beginning of the year. Everybody's always sort of surprised by that. I've already called for 2 IEP meetings and they're like, whoa, we just started here. We don't need to have an IEP meeting. And I'm like, we we just started here. Let's have an IEP meeting. Let's have discussion, you know? And they were, ooh, okay, all right, okay. And I'm having an IEP meeting. And the IEP meeting for my one person is going to be, this is going better than expected, right? And we're going to have a positive, time talking. And for the next one, it's going to be, hey, we're a little too focused on remediation. And I want to get the focus back on the things that they enjoy in life and being able to incorporate more of that into their day. And how can we make that adjustment and get it in writing? Next slide. Okay, so the benefits of taking this sort of approach really is that it is a collaborative approach. So I think about IEP meetings and the stress that people have, and often we're using words like we're fighting with the school. When I've noticed when taking this kind of approach that it builds relationships, and then when you have relationships with people and you collaborate with people and we're all focused on the same thing, that it feels less tension and less fighting. It's really, I found that really keeping that person at the center of things is empowering for families, and then also for the person who we're building this IEP for, that they feel that they have the right to make changes to the plan and to their own education, for their own benefit. It teaches advocacy skills, right? When my son was born, I didn't know I was going to be an advocate. He made me the advocate. He made me the advocate. You build that skill over time, and you do it by showing up and by having these conversations, and then you get more skilled at it. So to know that if you have a 3-year-old, you were at the beginning of this, and then by the end, you can be a really skilled advocate and have a really great understanding of this through this community of people who will help you. And by doing your own, basically self-study all along the way. That it supports people, it empowers people, and it keeps the focus on where do we want to be in the future? Where do we see this person really attaining those goals, and with the ultimate at the end in mind? Next slide. Okay, so here's real life. There's Alex. And there's my other kids, and building plans for each of them. For Alex, who has now made it to adulthood, for him, when I think about what were his hopes, what were his dreams, what was he good at, what did he like, we've always kept that in mind. And like his program really was very therapeutic. It was, can we get Alex to walk? That was really our focus as a family. Can we get him to be as healthy as he can be? And can he walk? And have like a very good quality of life. So Alex took his first step at 7, and he officially started walking at 8. And for us, that was huge, and it opened up a lot of things for his life. At the end, when Alex graduated from high school, he's never been able to read, he's never been able to write, but he has lived in the community. And if you were to ask Alex, does he have a good life? He will say yes. He will say yes. And he was able to do mostly the things that he wanted to do. And that is our hope for him moving forward. Can we keep Alex in the community? And can we have a life for Alex where he does the things that he wants to do? And that's it for him, right? For him, that's a successful life. For my other kids, it is, okay, you're twice exceptional. So how can we support somebody? Can a gifted person also have an IEP? Yes, they can. Okay, what is that program going to look like for them? Okay, so for them, to keep them happy and on target, we need to give them extra challenges, and that needs to be included in the plan, right? And we have regular meetings about how are we going to do that. So is it possible for somebody to be gifted and to have an IEP? The answer is yes. And then for my third person, it is, Okay, we have dyslexia. How are we going to remediate the dyslexia while also supporting the person, having scribes, making sure that like self-esteem is kept up and that they feel like they can find their way and find something that they are good at, because school is a struggle. So how do we incorporate those things in? So for the third one, it was, we have a lot of back and forth with, hey, we might have to lose one of our reading sessions, our one-on-one reading sessions, because chorus is at the same time. And then I would say, okay, from the child's point of view and their life and what is meaningful to them and where they're at and where their skills are at, what is the highest priority right now? Okay, so we're going to do chorus. We're going to do chorus. We're going to make sure that all the pieces are in place so that their hopes, their dreams, that they know that they are good at something and that they feel like they are more than their disability, right? And the things that they like are incorporated into their plans and into their days. And then looking at adulthood and what is going to make them feel happy, a part of the community, and like empowered as a person with a disability. Next slide. Okay, here are some tools, some resources that I think this is the beginning. This is people spend their entire lives going and like looking at these things, and these things by themselves can overwhelm you. And I'm going to say as a parent, and if you scan these slides, you can click on it, you can look more into this, but you will go down the rabbit hole and get overwhelmed. And I'm going to say to you, it's there, it's the internet, you cannot lose the internet. It's all there for you. But use these things to start. The most important part of this process is you as the parent being empowered to know that you have the right, that you are an equal member of the team, that your child has the right to education. They have a right to special education in the least restrictive environment, just to know that, right? And that you can use these things to start a reflective process of, are we seeing my individual as a whole person first, and making sure that all the parts, or are we only working on all the things you're not good at, right? If we spend the whole day on all the things you're not good at and trying to fix you, right? Then you might have a person who does not want to leave your house to go to that place, right? So that's always the challenge of this too. So how can we make this whole individualized education program work and be empowering for your family, be empowering for the person with the disability, while also allowing them to feel a sense of worth, value, dignity, and wanting to go to that place because they're a part of that place and that they have value, and that they're important and they're a piece of that community. Next slide. Okay, so there's maps, there's circles, there's charting the life course, and then at the end there's a little surprise that those things that you just find around that can help you. And there is, your person best. Next slide. I actually like this thing. It's the map, and it really is. It's numbered. It's a little numbered section. It is, tell me the story of your person. That's sort of like that first cloud on the left, right? What is their dream? Right. And this is sort of a sad piece of things. Number 3, underneath dream is, what is their nightmare? And for me, that's where maps, like looking at this idea of mapping out a person's life, was really helpful to me, because the reflection of what would be the worst thing. Okay, we're not going to do that then, right? Everybody, we're not going to do that. Like, we're not going to spend our day working on all these things, right? We're not going to head in that direction. That would be the absolute worst thing for this person. That piece of this I found to be really, really helpful. What can they contribute? This idea of like, what can people with disabilities do their lives have meaning? Can they contribute? I think about my son, Alex, who's 22, who's out of school. He made it through out of school. Some people will see him as, because he needs so much care, that he's a burden. But what I have noticed, that anybody who has been involved in his life or has known him has seen him in a complete opposite way. And people will talk about Alex as like, Alex made me who I am today. They will talk about that, like his personality, his presence, his perseverance, all of these things have made incredible impacts on people's lives. And that's one way of looking at him. And then there's some ways that people look at him as, but he needs one-to-one care. He needs. But this idea of like, he has a worth and he contributes and people look for him and they wonder about him, and that every life is important, right? And this helps to refocus on that. It's just a tool to help you to think about your child and refocus. The next thing is what is it going to take? And then here's the action agreement of like, who's doing this, who's doing what, and then the when. These things I think really, really help with just reflecting on what is it that we want. And especially for MAPS, this idea of this nightmare of like, what do we actually not want for our kids, right? Seclusion, restraint, right? For me, it was, when I think about nightmares, it was learning that my son spent hours in the nurse's office every day because he needed his medical treatments and missed all of school. And then that's when we realized we had to ask for one-to-one nursing. So all of these things just help you to think about planning and what's the best way of planning and being prepared through that kind of planning. Next slide. This looks very old. This looks very 90s. I do like the circles though. And circles are sort of everywhere, ancient ideas of circles. But the very first circle, if you look carefully, there's two little hearts. And what these circles are representing are basically different levels of people in your lives, right? So this is, in the middle is like the people who are the closest to you. The second circle is the friendship circle. And then there is the third circle, which is participation. And then the last, the sort of outward circle is like the exchange, like the people who are working, you know, the people that you go, the OT, the PT, things like that. And this, I feel like, is really sort of fascinating because you can see, and my slides, when you do, actually, we might have to refresh at some point, Kyoko, because I put my QR code and things, there were some links that I put in a little bit later. So we might have to refresh and then my QR code will come up at the end. But if you were to think about and look at this circle, if you were to think and look at the circle and do this, and there's a template that I'll have that will be linked to this too, if you want to just do this, do it for yourself. And if you see that everybody, the outside circle of paid staff, school staff, if that's really heavy and there's no friendship and there's no closer relationships, it really helps like to make sense of, are we building the right life here? Are we doing the right things? So especially I think about friendship and the role of friendship in school and how to get that into the IEP. If you have this circle of support and you show that we've got mom, we've got the family, like the little intermediate family, and then we've got all these people who are these people helping workers, school staff, but there's no friends. Okay, how can we make goals about that? Because look at this. And when you have this thing that you've worked on, it's a visual thing that everyone can see. Oh my gosh, there's no friends. Okay, well, let's work on that. It's just one more tool that can help you. All right, next slide. Okay, so charting the life course. This one, I feel like you could devote your life to doing this. I feel like there's books and videos and websites and trainings and it's building. So when you look at like maps, when you look at circles, you could see like the very beginning of people starting to like in the 90s, like put things together of like, how are we going to manage this? How are we going to manage the IEP and creating programs for people with disabilities so that we see them as whole people. And charting the life course really is about thinking about all the areas, right? So this core belief of people have the right to live, to love, to work, to play, and to pursue their own life aspirations, and to see everybody in that place of dignity, I think is really, really important. Next slide. This is the one that didn't come up. My last slide I wanted to show, and we'll see, we'll have to send out my slides because it'll have the QR code and it'll have another thing. But the last thing I wanted to leave you with was a picture of the All About Me that comes home every year with like elementary school students. That's all you need, right? If you don't have to do maps, circles, the charting life course, you don't have to do all this. You get this thing. You might even have the little board of, it's the first day of second grade. What's my favorite color? All of that information. Starting there. One of the most important things that I want, yes, thank you for doing, yay. What I wanted to point out about this, right? So this is my person with dyslexia, right? And what were the goals? So at the bottom, like, what was the favorite memory of third grade? Making friends, right? And that's one of the goals in the IEP. And then also, what were my favorite subjects? Science, always knew that, and reading. Because we were able to address through specialized instruction, right? Orton Gilliam, to get that reading from way, way, way behind, I hate reading, to on grade level, and maybe even a little bit above. And to see that, right, and to get that feedback, super, super important. And then for at the very top goals for this year, I want to join the band. Right away, I have a very clear picture. You know who's bringing that to the IEP meeting? I'm bringing it to the IEP meeting. So when somebody's like, hey, we got to do all this, and you have like OT at this time, PT at this time, speech at this time, how are we going to fit this all in? We're going to talk about band and chorus and friendships and the ultimate goal of like, where are we going to be at the end? So to use all of the resources that you have around you, and my final word will always be for the parents too, to know that you will grow in this. If you're overwhelmed, you'll grow in this, that there is a community there to support you. The disability, the parent community is like the most amazing, welcoming, helpful, giving group of people ever. So that if you go and you seek and you ask, there will be that support there. The Statewide Parent Advocacy Network, I will always credit them with making me who I am today. I work for them as a parent group specialist around 2006. Right, so I went from the mom who had a baby with Down syndrome in her 20s, who didn't know anything, to working for SPAN, to going into special education, becoming a learning disabilities teacher consultant, kept going, and am now a visiting professor teaching future teachers how to do this right, and so I say to you that know your role, be empowered by that you are the expert as parent, right there, you are the expert. Set the agenda that we're going to see our person as a whole person and not just as a pile of problems that we have to fix. And know that there is support that is out there to help you through this. And I thank you for your time. Well, the why. Yeah, hey, there's actually a final thought. One more. Thanks. So why are we doing this, right? Positive future, commitment, future agreement. That's what the IEP is. It's a commitment, it's a contract, and appreciate the strengths and gifts for everybody. And now when we go to the last slide, for real, there's a QR code if you want these slides. Thank you so much.
Hey, Kyoko, just a quick question. We're holding the Q&As till the end because there were a couple of really good questions, but I wanted to make sure we heard from all the presenters. So we are holding the questions until the end. Kyoko?
I'm seeing some.
Okay.
Okay.
I think so.
Yeah, we'll hold it until the end. Cathy, who's next?
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Cathy Tamburello. I am the Regional Family Support Planning Council statewide vice chair. I'm also the co-chair of Council 4, which is Essex County. As Susan said, I think my best credentials are mom to Michael, who is 38 years old now, has also survived the school system with very, very complex needs. I'm also a retired school administrator and special educator, and I started a million years ago as a speech therapist. So Susan, that was amazing. I think you really set the stage. Actually, you're a really hard opening act to follow. So thank you for that perspective. I want everyone to hold that thought. I want everyone to think as I go through, because I'm going to go through the nuts and the bolts of the IEP. But I want you to hold that thought that this document is centered on your loved one. and not on just filling out forms and coming up with a document that just has a bunch of goals and objectives and is deficit driven. You want this to go with the perspective that Susan so eloquently set up for us, that this is your child. You know your child better than anyone. I am an expert in Michael Tamburello. Nobody knows him better than I do. You are that same expert in your child, and you have a lot to offer as part of an equal member of the child study team. The other thing before we start, I just want to talk about starting your journey with an IEP team with the spirit of collaboration. I know that a lot of people feel that they need to go in and really, demand services and demand things from the team, but I think your child will do best if you can reach a spirit of collaboration and a good collaborative working relationship with your team. They have good information to offer. You also have equally good information to offer, and bringing those two perspectives together is one of the things that will help you build a good program for your child. So I think I can share my screen now. Is that true, Kyoko?
Yes, you should be able to.
All right, let's see. There we go. Let me just. All right. Everybody can see that. So I'm going to take a deep dive into the IEP, because I think that it's critical that you understand the IEP. You get this piled, somewhere around 35 pieces of paper. I've seen them up to 80 pieces of paper. So I think it's important for you to really understand the parts of the IEP. And I think there are key parts that you really want to zone in on and make sure are expressing the needs of your child. So we're going to go through them. We as educators are notorious for acronyms. So we're going to try and take the mystery out of those. So as Susan so eloquently articulated, you need to start with a vision for your child. I just put in a few additional bullets here. What are the top 5 things you want to see your child accomplish this year? So an IEP will take you through a year. It's not necessarily on the anniversary of the school year, but you want to think about each IEP as the goals and objectives should be things that your child can accomplish and should accomplish within the next year until your next IEP. What supports does your child need to accomplish that, and what barriers are keeping your child from accomplishing those? So I'll be the first to say that when I was raising 2 kids, one of which had very complex needs, I was not the most organized person. And I found I was constantly looking for papers. So as hard as it is, and as difficult, and the demands that I know that are on your time, I think it really helps if you can organize all of your documents. When I talk with families and I ask for a previous IEP, very often they'll say, oh, wait, I don't know where it is. And then we have to go back to the district. So if we can get everything together, I think that really helps. I'm a big proponent of the binder method. If you came into my home, you would see a whole shelf of Michael, volume 1, 2, 3, 4, on all of the things that have to do with Michael. And now I know where things are. If somebody asks me for something, I can pull it up really quickly. The other reason you want to have all of this together in one place is you really want to be able to decide if your child is making progress. That's really the bottom line. Is this program helping your child to make the reasonable and meaningful progress? So you want to be able to look at last year's IEP compared to the new projected IEP. You want to be able to look at the evaluations, and especially when the new triennial comes up and they evaluate your child again, are you seeing progress? So start easy, get a binder, last 3 IEPs, most recent evaluations, keep your progress reports or report cards in there. this is a great place to keep some of those person-centered things that you might work on, the circles, the mapping, the charting the life course things, or at least just a write out of what your vision is for your child and who your child is, the all about me. Correspondence and emails. Now, emails are easy to keep within your email program. Make a separate folder and just keep putting all the school-based emails about your child into one place so that you can pull them up when you need them. There are a lot of great resources on the New Jersey DOE website. Dr. Petino is going to talk about those. This is one that I did pull off. Have all of your contacts in one place. Very often when the new school year begins, you might have a new case manager, you have new teachers, new therapists. Keep all of the contacts in one place so you know who to contact, their phone numbers, their emails, all of that. You want all of that where it's at your fingertips. Again, first page of the binder. So I just wanted to review a little bit of the process of coming to an IEP. There are a lot of different meetings that you're called in for, and the district has names for all of them. And I think it's important that you know why you're going in for a meeting. So I'm just going to do a quick review of those. So at some point, whether it was at 3 when they came out of early intervention, or maybe as school moved on, your child was referred to the child study team. They called you in at that point for an evaluation planning meeting. That we will also be called in every 3 years when the triennial is done, or anytime your child is going to be evaluated. So you'll be called in for this evaluation planning meeting. The evaluators will review what evaluations they're going to do and what they hope to learn from them. And you'll be asked to sign off on a permission to evaluate your child. They will evaluate the child. They have 60 days to complete the evaluation and then another 30 days to complete the IEP. And they will then call you in for an eligibility meeting. At the eligibility meeting, they're going to determine if your child is eligible for special education services. That's done every 3 years, or it's an initial eligibility meeting. Just a little note, when this is your first eligibility meeting, your child is first being determined eligible for special education, you have to sign off on that IEP for it to happen. You do not need to sign off on subsequent IEPs, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. If your child is being determined eligible for special education, they usually end that meeting and then right then and there start the IEP meeting. They usually do them together, but they really are 2 separate meetings. So at the IEP meeting, they will determine the goals and objectives, modifications, and related services that are needed for your child's program. Then they will talk about placement. Very often parents go into the initial evaluations starting with placement. Placement really should come at the end of this whole process, because the placement should be determined based on the needs of your child. So the IEP should denote all the things that your child needs to be successful. And then the program, the placement, should be matched to those needs. So very often, this happens a lot with kids with autism. The family will come in at 3 and say, I want a certain program, a certain out-of-district program. But you have to give the district a chance to evaluate your child, look at what programs are available. And I really encourage, when you're talking about placement with your district, if they're suggesting placements that you're not so sure about, I would go see them anyway. I looked at a lot of placements for Michael. Michael was a tough kid to find the right program for. His needs are very complex and very wide-ranging. And there were times that I went in to look at placements, and I knew the minute I walked in the door, this was not the right place for Michael. But I also came out of looking at that placement, learning something that made me a better consumer of placements, a better advocate to get the placement that he needed, and better able to articulate what he needed. So if a district is asking you to look at a placement and you think, not for my kid, I would just humor them and go and look. It doesn't mean you're committing, but I would definitely look. You will learn something from doing that. So when to evaluate? The district will ask to evaluate your child every 3 years. It's called the triennial. And the purpose of that is to determine if your child remains eligible for special education. But I want to point out that if there's concerns about progress, you can ask to have your child reevaluated sooner than that. You can ask anytime after 1 year. So really kind of look at how progress is being documented. And we're going to talk a lot about that. But just know that they have to do it every 3 years. They will ask at times for the triennial if you'd like to waive an evaluation. I certainly would not do that towards the end of your child's school career. I would absolutely have them evaluated. There are times I did waive Michael's evaluations at one time because I felt things were moving along and it wasn't going to really tell us anything that we didn't already know. But that's your choice. So let's just look at the purpose of the IEP for a second. It's to establish clear, measurable goals and objectives. The key word here is measurable. You should be able to have some clear data as to how your child is doing based on those goals and objectives. And to state the special education related services, supplementary aids and services that the district will provide. So we're going to look at all the parts of the IEP so you can see where all of those places should be and read them critically, because things sometimes there's just typos. I was talking with a family recently and it was a simple typo. They put their child in 7th grade instead of 8th grade, but you want to check everything and you want to know how to read it critically. So let's take a deep dive. So here are some of the key points of an IEP. As I mentioned, I retired as a school administrator from Bergen County Special Services. I ran their middle and high school for students with autism. I was a supervisor in that program. If you ask anyone who worked with me during those years, they will tell you that I was the PLAF police. The PLAF stands for Present Levels of Academic and Functional Performance. We're going to go deep into that. That is my soapbox and something that I look at any IEP that I'm asked to look at. We're going to have a statement of measurable goals and objectives, how those goals and objectives will be measured, and how progress will be reported. We'll talk a lot about that. You should really have a good sense of what your child's progress is. A statement of special education related services, supplementary aids and services, program modifications and supports, and this is another really important part, a statement of parental concerns. Now that's how it's listed in the IEP, but what I like people to put into that is what's going well. Tell the school what's working, and then what your concerns are. This is where you can put a statement of your vision, what you want accomplished. I'll use Susan's example. I would very much like to see my child participate in band and chorus this year. Whatever you are thinking about your child's program, get that down in a statement of parental concerns. And I like to get that to the team ahead of the meeting so they can kind of think about that and how can they start to incorporate some of those things into the IEP. So here are the key components. This is another key component. We're not going to talk a lot about transition plans today, but a transition plan should start at age 14. It can start sooner if it's appropriate. And the purpose of the transition plan is to start to look ahead at where your child will be at graduation, whether that be at 18 or it be at 21. So what are the things we need to start making sure are in place and that we're supporting that child to develop their life as an adult? So this is the front page of a New Jersey IEP. They're going to all look pretty much the same. Just always check up here at the top to make sure it's all correct. We've caught all kinds of things. We've caught the wrong phone number for the parent. And there's no malice there. It's just typos. But, check all of that and make sure that that's correct. And then we're going to look at some of these key parts now. So over here, you're going to see the projected start date of the IEP and the projected end date of the IEP. And I'm just going to stop and for clarification, when you have an IEP meeting and you go in for your IEP meeting, your child has a current IEP. That's the IEP that has been in effect since your last IEP meeting and continues to be in effect until the new IEP goes into place. The IEP that they're giving you that day is the projected IEP. So we'll talk a little bit more about that, but I just want to keep those two terms together. So here's the projected IEP start date. So that will generally be 15 days from your meeting. The end date, at which time they'll have to do a new IEP. You're going to look ahead, and is there a behavior intervention plan? Are there modifications? All of these things should be checked off if they are part of the IEP. They may not be appropriate for all IEPs. One of the interesting things that I would see a lot is there a behavior intervention plan? No. And then when you read the PLAFs, you hear all about behavior. So those are the kinds of things that you want to really look critically at. So over here, you're going to be seeing their determination. They're eligible for special education, what their classification is. New Jersey has a list of specific classifications. Are they getting extended school year? What is the most annual review meeting date? When's the next one due? It's a little, there's repetition in an IEP. And when is this will tell you, where did my arrow go? Here it is. This will tell you when the next triennial evaluation is due, okay? And this just is the history. This was when your child was initially referred. Initially, you consented to evaluate their initial eligibility, their initial IEP, and so on. So let's talk about the PLAF. This is my favorite part of the IEP. The PLAF should incorporate several things, and please read it critically to make sure that it does. Academic skills. How is your child performing in reading, language arts, and math, etc.? This should talk about academic skills in relation to the IEP goals in your current IEP. So if your child has an IEP goal that says they will learn 25 sight words, somewhere in the PLAF, it should tell you how many sight words they learned. It should talk about functional skills. How is this child doing with non-academic skills? This is where you're going to talk about friendships and social skills, activities of daily living, behavior. The PLAF is this document, the present levels of academic and functional performance, is the basis for writing the new goals and objectives in your projected IEP. And this is where it will go. So what specifically do we want to make sure is in a PLAF? The impact of the disability on the student, the statement of academic strength. So there, it shouldn't only talk about what the child is struggling with. It talk about what the kid's doing well. Statement of academic needs, measurable progress based on the current IEP. So it is not okay in terms of progress to see John is doing really well with reading. That doesn't really tell us what the progress is. And it should talk about a statement of functional abilities and needs. And again, this is all based on the needs of your child. So one of the things that I think is really important to do is to look at this new PLAF in the projected IEP versus the PLAF in your current IEP that was written a year ago. So you want to see progress. You also don't want to see any cutting and pasting. You want to see all of the parts of the PLAF, and you want specific examples of how your child is doing. I don't think there was as much focus on PLAFs when my son was in school, but I will never forget the one that said, Michael Tamburello is a very well-dressed young man. We don't really care about that. We care about what this child is doing in terms of the IEP. So we want to make sure that the PLAF is specific. What area are we talking about? So there should be a PLAF for each academic area that there are IEP goals for. What is the focus and what's the data? Based on teacher assessments, this student attains 60% accuracy. You want to see percentages. You want to see things that concretely tell you how your child has done. You should ask what works for the student, what interferes with progress. Make sure the PLAF directly addresses goals and objectives. And you want to look at this in terms of what you're seeing at home. So are they seeing a bunch of skills and saying they're mastered, and you see no carryover, no generalization at home? Then you want to ask about that. Or are you seeing they're saying he's not doing something in school, but yet you see your child doing it at home? Again, you want to ask about that. And that's why it's really important to compare it to the previous PLAF that's in your current IEP. You should see growth. And if you don't, you want to ask about that. So here's a PLAF. I'm going to read it really quickly. JD knows the routine and rules of the classroom and follows classroom procedures. He gets along with his classmates. He often gets up and comes to talk to the teacher during lessons, especially when the material is difficult for him. He will often say that he is tired. According to the teacher college assessment, he is reading at level AA. So this is the assessment, reading assessment that this child school district uses. So it's telling you specifically where the reading level is. He's able to retell a story after it has been read to him. Since he doesn't know all his letters or their sounds, this has been our focus. He has made slow progress. He is able to identify a few letters and they name them. He is inconsistent with his sight words. Sometimes he knows I, the, like, so you know specifically what he knows. He has been working on writing his full name. He knows the letters in his name, but due to fine motor challenges is struggling with staying within the lines and spacing the letters. So this gives me a pretty good picture of where this kid is in language arts. Look at that, focus on that before at your IEP meeting, and feel free to ask questions about that. You can ask for samples of work. So here we are in math, same type of thing. He enjoys drawing and working in small groups. He needs 2 to 3 verbal prompts to start and complete each assignment. He can solve addition and subtraction problems with 3 digits with 85% accuracy. That is specifically telling you progress. He can, so as opposed to a teacher writing, he's making progress in addition and subtraction. That doesn't tell you anything. He can complete 1 digit by 1 digit multiplication and division with an overall average of 83%. So you would want to look at these percentages and these skills in terms of what is in the current IEP. Recent introduction of multiplication and division problems with 2 digits by 1 digit resulted in a score of 52%. So again, I don't have to read the rest of it, but it's very, very specific as to what this child is doing, and you have a picture of their progress. So here's what you do not want to see. He's a pleasure to have in class. Well, that's nice. Our class is learning to solve addition and subtraction problems with up to 3 digits. We just introduced multiplication and division problems with 2 digits by 1 digit. We will continue to work on this. He does all his homework and he works well with his classroom. So this is what I call a PLAF on the teacher. The teacher, this is telling you what the teacher has done, what the teacher is teaching, but it's not telling you what your child is doing. So when you see our class is doing, we are teaching, then you need to question that PLAF, because that is not giving you the information that you need out of a PLAF. So here we want to talk a little bit about the statement of parental concerns. This is your opportunity to express your vision for your child's vision for themselves, your priorities and your concerns. Ask that this be added to the IEP as you wrote it. So we want to keep it fairly short, say what you need to say, keep it polite and professional, include what is working as well as the challenges, clearly state your concerns and give recommendations for what you think will work. Sometimes parents go in and they say, you know, if you give them the direction this way, they're going to get it. And the teachers have an aha moment. This is a sample of a parental concern statement. which tells a lot about this child. I'm not going to read it verbatim, but basically the gist of it is that this is a bright kid who has a significant reading disability. But he really wants to learn, and he's learning through watching YouTube videos. He's learning, he's really into animals and nature and all of that. And he's learning a lot, and he has a thirst to learn. So the point of this parental concern is, yes, work on the reading, but let's present some of the content knowledge in like things like science and social studies through another way, like YouTube videos. And we want to make, and then they also specifically go on to say, we want at this point for him to have text to speech and speech to text to support the reading challenges. So this family was very specific about what this child needed. So let's look at goals and objectives. Goals and objectives should name a clear skill or behavior. They should describe how that skill or behavior will be assessed, and they should state a clear criteria for mastery. One of my little IEP pet peeves is 50-50 is not a good criteria for mastery. So remember, the goals and objectives should relate back to the PLAF. So you should know that's your starting point. That's your baseline. So now what would be the next steps? And those should make up the goals and objectives. So now we have modifications, supplementary aids, and assistive technology are also an important part of the IEP. You know, Susan made a good point when she said that back in the day, IEPs were handwritten. They were 1 or 2 pages. But teachers had to really kind of think about what those goals and objectives should be. Where is this kid? And they would write them out. Now all the districts are using menu programs. So there's just a long menu of goals and objectives based on the New Jersey Core Curriculum Content Standards, and they're kind of clicking through. One of the things I would say to our teachers when I was working is you can modify those a little bit so that you're really putting in specific things to the child. Also, modifications and supplementary aids and services also are click off. So sometimes you just see like a long laundry list. It's somebody just went through and click, click, click. You should be looking for specific things that are meaningful to your child, so that those modifications, like providing notes ahead of time, are something that is very clearly delineated and that are being done for your child. Assistive technology is part of the IEP. You know, it can be high tech, it can be low tech, sometimes a weighted pencil or high tech text to speech. The joy of technology these days. I was an assistive technology specialist as part of my many career things that I've done. We used to have to ask districts to buy expensive word prediction or text to speech or speech to text programs. That is built in to almost everything now. If you use the Google suite of everything, all of that is built in. It's just that teachers have to know when it's appropriate to use it, and that has to be spelled out in the IEP. Related services. You're going to talk about related services, transportation, and extended school year. So related services are things like speech, OT, PT, counseling. There's always a lot of conversation about related services. How are they delivered? How many times a week are they delivered? Sometimes more is not better. Sometimes it is. And again, it's very specific to the child. Always check the related services section of the IEP, because it will specifically tell you how many times a week, where the service will be delivered. Is it a group or is it an OT? And how long is that service? Is it a 20-minute session? Is it a 30-minute session? Whatever it is. So you want to check that. It's important to know where that service is delivered. Is your child getting push in or pull out? And how is that related to their specific needs? Very often families go in advocating for lots of related services. Sometimes that's just pulling them out of class a lot, and they're missing their academics. So I think it's really important to have an open discussion, again, about what are the goals and objectives and how can we best accomplish them. And then I think you always want to be thinking ahead to generalization. So pulling someone out to a little speech room down the hall might be great to teach a targeted skill, but then how are we going to take that skill out of that little speech room and bring it into the classroom and into the community at large? So I think those are the things that you really want to talk about. I'm going to talk a minute from now about transportation separately. Extended school year. There are lots of reasons why extended school year should be in a program. The most commonly talked about one is, will the child regress to the point that they cannot recoup those skills by the, within a month of the new school year? But also extended school year can be because the child's at a key point to learn, and the moment you don't want to break that momentum. So we might need extended school year. That's talked about every year in the IEP. Just because your child has extended school year one year, that's going to be reevaluated and the need determined the next year. I've seen some pretty creative things done with extended school year. It doesn't always have to be in the classroom. Sometimes it can be a community. When kids are at transition age, it can be a work experience. So there's lots of ways to look at extended school year. A word about transportation. The Regional Family Support Planning Council, as Dottie said in the beginning, is an advocacy group for individuals throughout the lifespan with disabilities. So we advocate for things that need to be changed or things that need to be made better. And we also want to hear from families because that's how we base our advocacy plans. Transportation has come to the forefront recently. And transportation, I will say, as a former school administrator, was the bane to my existence. I think it's important to really check and make sure that there are really good safety precautions for your child, especially if they're being transported out of district. If you see bus personnel on cell phones or with headphones, you need to call and report that. Staff need to understand emergencies. They should be trained in CPR, and they should have emergency contact information available on that bus at all times. The bus drivers, they should be able to contact that bus driver at all times. The bus company should have a contact number that you can reach. If your child's late coming home, there should be no 4 o'clock cutoff. I would find that all the time when I was working. So I think it's really important to talk about the safety of your children as they're being transported, and put those things specifically in the IEP. Whoops, I just need to move this so I can see. So then we're going to talk about special education programs, and then related services will also be put in separately for extended school years. So the service delivery model for related services may differ. I know what we did at Bergen County Special Services, whatever the number of speeches, OTs, PTs that the child had during the school year, they received in the summer because of a reduced school day, one individual and one group. So if they had 3, it didn't matter. It went down, and you'll see that, and that's in many extended school years. So we're going to hold questions to the end, and I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Petino. And I will stop my share. And there we go. So thank you, everybody.
Hello. All right, just give me 1 second to get situated. First of all, I just want to say these presentations have been really impressive. Oh, now I can't see everybody. Sorry.
I know, it's weird.
It is weird. Yeah, you just kind of like everybody disappeared, so I can't see anyone. No, these presentations have been both powerful, informative, but also it's also great coming into this presentation to see that, like, Cathy, your presentation on the IEP is so aligned with, it is closely aligned with the trainings that we do for districts, which is incredibly helpful. That you bridge that gap between being a district administrator and being a parent in such a way that really helps put everybody on the same page, which I think is really impactful, just to hear you talk about the IEP process in such an understandable and clear way. What I would like to do to piggyback off of the two presentations is to talk a little bit about the work that the New Jersey Department of Education Office of Special Education is currently doing, and discuss, sorry if you hear sirens in the background, and discuss with you a wealth of resources that are at your fingertips and available to all parents throughout the state of New Jersey. I think Susan, one of the themes of Susan's presentation was like how far we've come and how far we still need to go, right? There's just this philosophy of continued growth, continued advocacy. And in our office, we've adopted that similar philosophy of continuous improvement, continually identifying needs, gaps, and concerns that come up across the state, and trying to, in our own way, try to address them through the methods that we have at our disposal. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about who we are first, as a state Department of Education Office of Special Education, just so you are aware of our office and what we offer. I'm going to talk about some new resources and our website. And our website was recently redesigned from top to bottom across the board. So I want to talk about the pros and cons of the redesign, and try to help you navigate some of these resources, because I also understand that in today's day and age, having every resource, all this information at your fingertips can also be overwhelming sometimes. So some of the tools that will be shared after today's presentation are designed to try to help you navigate the website a little bit with a little more ease and get to where you need to go a little quicker, a little bit faster. The other piece of this presentation is just give you a taste of some of the program supports, partnerships, and opportunities that we have. A lot of these are not just for parents. A lot of these are actually supporting districts, but just so that you're aware as a parent, as an advocate, some of these partnerships, it's amazing. We have so many large and small, all different size districts in the state of New Jersey. We have over 658 districts throughout New Jersey, which is a tremendous number of districts for such a small state. And what we find that can be frustrating on our end sometimes is just we get the message out, we put out social media posts, we put out weekly broadcasts, we put out newsletters, and then we still get school districts and administrators and personnel who are like, I never knew this existed. And so that's a piece of this as well that I want to talk about, is how you can also stay informed as a parent. And then we'll get to question and answers as a panel. So our director unfortunately could not be here today. Her name is Kim Murray. Kim is a special educator at heart. She started out as a special education teacher for students with significant disabilities. And she has been with the State Department of Ed for many years. And in those years, she has gone from being on, has seen both sides of it. She's seen obviously the classroom experience that she had, but also her experience at the state level has been around compliance, complaint investigation, around things like due process and things like that. So she sees it from the policy and procedure side as well. We have reconfigured the office because we used to have two separate special education offices. We used to have one that was focused on compliance and complaint investigation, and one that was focused on programming and supports and technical assistance and professional development for schools and supports for parents. So we combined into a much larger office now. So we've reconfigured to have a couple of assistant directors. So I was the only assistant director for a while, and I've welcomed in recent months 2 additional assistant directors. So I am still in charge of programs and professional development, but we have Dr. Chinwe Asandu, who's in charge of our Learning Resource Center network and also district outreach. throughout the state, and technical assistance, what we call TA or technical assistance. And then Nicole Booten is in charge of our compliance and dispute resolution arm of our office. So I think probably at our lowest point was during COVID as far as our staffing. Our capacity dwindled over the years. I came here 8 years ago as a behavior specialist, and my background, I didn't even say, but my background is a special education teacher. I started in 1999, and then I transitioned into a school psychologist. So I was on the child study team, and a lot of what both Cathy and Susan said resonated with me as a case manager. And when I do trainings for districts sometimes around IEP development, I do it with the framework of not knowing what I was doing as a case manager, because you learn on the job very often. So hearing Cathy talk as an administrator, I wish I was in her district as a case manager, because I would have learned so much from her at that time. So it's really on the job training very often. So, you know, we're looking at it now with more of an expansive view, and we're really scaling up our efforts. At one point in time, we had about 7 people in the Office of Special Education for the entire state. And that was during the COVID crisis as well. So it was all hands on deck, and it was very, very, very challenging to meet the needs of many of our districts. But since COVID, we have been able to, for a variety of reasons, we've been able to expand our staffing. So right now we are comprised of a number of subject area specialists on my side of the office, as well as learning resource center staff, and as well as compliance and complaint investigators and monitors on the compliance side of things as well. More of the legal side of things, policy, procedure, things like that. So on my side of the shop, I just want to talk about the supports that we can offer, right? So we have 2 transition specialists, Bill Freeman and Joanne Johnson. I just worked with them this week. They're doing communities of practice throughout the state around post-secondary transition. And they also work closely with a couple of transition programs that I'll be talking about shortly that we provide to school districts for training. We have an autism specialist, Dr. Amanda Philp, who is tremendous. The first thing she did when she came on board, which was a much needed update to a document from 2004, was to revise. It was a year-long process of stakeholder outreach and committee meetings and revisions around 3 different grade areas: preschool, elementary school, and secondary school, around the autism program quality indicators. So we have many school districts in New Jersey, and we have many districts that offer in-district programming for students with disabilities and specialized programming. So that might look like an autism program that's maybe self-contained autism program, or it might look like a program for students with multiple disabilities, or a program for students with behavioral needs. And providing those services in district is in the spirit of the least restrictive environment, because rather than a student perhaps going out of district and needing transportation, going into a different community and different outside of the local area, many districts have opted to provide in-district programs. But what we are trying to provide are guidance documents. These are not legally binding documents. This is under the assumption that they're providing what's legally mandated to be provided. But these are best practice documents. So the one that we just put out a couple of weeks ago was the Autism Program Quality Indicators, which is an update from an original document in 2004. And this is really a self-assessment tool for districts to take a look at their programming to ensure that they're sort of in that same philosophy that we're in as an office of continuous improvement, and looking to identify gaps in their programs so that they can meet the needs of the students that are in those individual programs. And also keeping in mind the idea that the ultimate goal for our students is community participation, right? And for them to achieve their post-secondary goals down the road. So in order to do that, we look at these sometimes pull-out programs that are maybe what we call self-contained, but how much opportunity, how much outreach, how much sort of synergy is going on with the general education school at large. So that's also in mind with these autism program quality indicators. We have a fantastic Alexandra Pensiero. We have a fantastic federal reporting and stakeholder engagement specialist. She runs our state special education advisory council. Those meetings are once a month. They are open to the public, but they are open to the public, and they fall under the Open Public Meetings Act, which means you can attend those meetings, and they are done remotely using Microsoft Teams. And you can ask to participate through public comment, and you can participate with a 3-minute, much like a town council meeting or a school board of ed meeting, you get 3 minutes of public comment at each of those meetings. But it's also very informative. So even if you come and want to be a fly on the wall and just see what the Special Ed Advisory Council issues are of the day or of the month might be, it's very helpful, I think, to see that. And we've even had district personnel attend as guests, and they're pretty, they had no idea that this work was going on a monthly basis with our Special Ed Council. We have a 619 coordinator. Those of you who don't know what 619 means, it's preschool students with disabilities. And it is the sort of IDA code for that section of IDA, really looking at preschool programs for students with disabilities. So we have, her name's Jennifer Nicosia. We have her as a preschool coordinator, but we also have 2 preschool disability specialists that help her with regional work. We have Iris Devon, who just started about 2 weeks ago to cover the northern region of New Jersey. And then we have Eileen, oh my gosh, Eileen Goy, sorry, I just blanked it. I want to say Gavin for some reason. Eileen Goy, who covers our central and south regions as well. Kristen Gavinelli is our speech language specialist. She's also relatively new because we found that this was an area, early language development. And she also has a background in deaf education that really could be useful throughout the school districts. We have a deaf hard of hearing specialist and a deaf state coordinator, Wendy Euphemia, and Joey. I'm sorry, I got distracted with the question there. Sorry. And Joey, our deaf hard of hearing specialist, they cover state trainings as well and specialized child study team trainings as well. A learning strategies specialist, Reese Reed. Her background is specifically on inclusion, co-teaching strategies, and provides trainings to district around those techniques. She's also working very closely with an early literacy project that we're doing, which I'll talk about in a moment. And we are going to be onboarding, hopefully within the next few months, a literacy specialist as well. And then the last position that we have put out and hope to hire for is an inclusion facilitator. And what we want to do with the inclusion facilitator is really look to offer trainings throughout the state, but we're starting locally with a regional model with the inclusion facilitator as well. So those of you who are frequent visitors of our website may have noticed in the last year that we have gone out with the old, which is this is kind of what our old aesthetic used to look like, and in with the new. So it's more aesthetically pleasing, which is great. However, it is also sometimes challenging to navigate. So what I want to just go over really quickly, first of all, this was a massive undertaking by Alexandra Pensiero, deserves a lot of the credit for spearheading this work, our stakeholder engagement specialist. We created 33 new sites within our special education website. We have a total of 35 sites total that encompass special education. We have more coming in the process. Everything from our overarching homepage, our newsletter. We have a special education in action newsletter, data reporting at the local and federal level, all the way to ways for parents to engage. So things like a transition toolkit, which I'll talk about momentarily, and also resources around things like assistive technology, preschool students with disabilities, child find, parental rights, of course, and a lot of other information as well. So attached to some of the handouts, the sort of virtual handouts that we have today, you'll get a copy of my presentation with active links. So when you see blue underlined words on the screen, those are active links. They will take you to the website that it's referencing. But these next two slides will be also provided in an interactive format. When I say interactive, they'll be PDFs. And what these are web guides, right? So here is a topical web guide. So here are the foundations. This is the special ed code. Those of you who want to dive deep into some of the special ed law and code, these are things around dynamic learning maps assessments and portfolio assessment appeals, how these things look like, or how these things go towards graduation requirements, things like that as your student gets into secondary school age. Our newsletter. So all of these buttons here, all of these things, when you get this document shared with you as a interactive web guide, you can click on it and it will take you right to that website. It'll open up the web browser and take you right there. This one also is specific. I'm just going to call your attention to quadrant 2 here. Quadrant 2 is the parent and family tools. So there's the comprehensive student support template. You saw a little bit of that in Cathy's presentation. We have our START program, which I'll talk about momentarily, which is a partnership with SPAN to help improve upon parent engagement at the local level through special education parent advisory groups. There's a list of hotlines and helplines that you can access, planning for post-secondary education and post-school life. We have a transition toolkit, which I'll show. And then there's a link right there to the Special Ed Advisory Council if you wanted to attend those monthly meetings as a member of the public. Also, challenging behavior tips for students who are preschool age, what to do with if you find out that your child is diagnosed with autism. If your child is diagnosed with autism, that first 100 days toolkit, which is parents have told us is very helpful in getting them started on this journey, and also navigating. Sometimes this is navigating a maze, right? Because there's Department of Education and we provide certain resources, but then there's Department of Children and Families, which provide resources. And as your student ages and gets older, then you get involved with possibly Department of Labor, which is DVRS, or Department of Human Services, which is DDD. So you have all these different agencies, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the efforts that we're trying to do, to help kind of make this system a little bit easier to navigate. So I'll talk about that momentarily. But in the meantime, I just wanted to call attention to these resources. This family portal is for all, not specifically special education. This is the family portal for all parents and families throughout the state of New Jersey. So this is the NJDOE main page family portal. I recommend it because it's a good place to start for, in general, family engagement and family information, parent information. I also brought this up because this is a hot topic right now for many of our students, many of our families. Especially this was happening before COVID for sure. We were seeing an increase. I think there was a number of reasons for it, but an increase in mental health needs popping up in the schools, right? Students who required specialized mental health supports or additional mental health supports, possibly outside of the school day. So we, our Office of Student Support Services, we developed in partnership with them a mental health page. I was part of a task force that created a school-based mental health guide. That's a comprehensive guide for school districts that has a wealth of resources to help support schools. As far as providing mental health services so students don't fall through the cracks. And the sort of model that we use for a lot of the work we do at the DOE, and especially in Office of Special Ed, is like this idea of a 3-tiered model. We look at what can we provide everybody, that is a helpful preventative resource. But then when students need additional, how can we provide some of those resources? And then when they really need individualized, let's say, specialized help, how do we get that to the students as well? And how do we make those decisions, So that's a lot of the discussion that we have here at our level at the DOE. And then the Office of Special Ed Parent Resources, this takes you to that page. Obviously, parental rights in special education is sort of the foundational document that your school district should be providing you at these IEP meetings, and it's a great reference. But we also recognize that it is a flawed reference, right? There are still parents out there that struggle navigating parental rights in special education. So it has been recently revised with a few tweaks, and it was recently reposted. However, we are looking at additional revisions, but these revisions, because it's a legal document, it's based off of federal codes, federal law, as Susan brought up with IDEA, but also state code, which is our state's implementation of that federal law. Because of all of this, there's an intensive amount of review that goes into the document before we would put out a fully revised version. But we're always looking for ways to make it more understandable and helpful to parents. The website, the Office of Special Ed website, also contains community-based resources like helpful websites and hotlines throughout the community. And then there's a wealth of resources that goes, I could go on and on talking about it, but it goes, we have things from early childhood all the way through post-secondary transition resources. So a few that I want to highlight that I think are really important for parents is one, given the theme of today's presentation being the IEP process. This process can sometimes be at odds, right? Like you could have situations where a parent is a valued member of that IEP team. And then you can have situations where a parent doesn't feel like a valued member of that IEP team. There are times where the district and the parents, you guys are in sync. And there are times where that's not the case, right? So before it gets to a point of mediation, before it gets to a point of due process, which are parental rights, you can request mediation, or you can request due process. There's a step before that too that many parents are not aware of, which is the facilitated IEP process, right? So a facilitated IEP can be requested through the NJDOE website. I attached a link to this slide presentation right here, the request form. But before you go ahead and request it, I would recommend you go to the facilitated IEP site to learn more information. But I'll give you a quick overview. It's a voluntary process, but both the district and the parent have to agree to have this facilitator come in. And the facilitator looks to promote a productive, student-centered meeting, right? One that's conducted in a respectful, collaborative manner, and it's done in a way that is like a model for future IEP meetings. And sometimes facilitators will come out and just do a one-off meeting and things go really well and the IEP is taken care of. And other times the facilitator may come back or be asked to come back. Either because they did a nice job and the district and the parent think it would be helpful to have them involved again, or because there was difficulty coming to an agreement as a team and making those team decisions. So I highly recommend that you check out our website around facilitated IEP, and that you look into this process as an opportunity. We also see the facilitated IEP as an opportunity for, like I said, modeling, and it's sort of a little bit of training for how to conduct future meetings from there. Another quick resource that I want to go through, which has a ton of information, is the Transition Toolkit site. Sorry, Transition Toolkit. Got tripped up on my words there. So and I think Cathy did a wonderful job speaking about this important part of every student's life is, okay, school, like even if you're so happy with your school district and you're getting so many supports in that school district, and things are going really, really well, what we fear is that after the students graduating high school or after they complete their 18 to 21-year-old program, or they're graduating at 21. What happens? What happens after that? And they're no longer under the purview of the schools, right? They're no longer under our purview, and IDEA no longer applies. What happens at that point, right? So we really advocate, and Cathy spoke about this, like trying to start the transition process as early as possible. When the family and the students are ready to start having those discussions. The law mandates that at 14, this process has to start, right? In some capacity at 14. And then it really amps up at 16, right? So we're supposed to really do that, but we want to be thinking about this and have this in mind as early as possible. And I'll talk about one of our projects relatively soon called community-based instruction. We have districts reaching out that want training on community-based instruction as early as middle school, right? So they want to start before high school, getting out in the community and getting those skills to participate fully in community activities and things along those lines. So it's really just like, it's starting a journey, but it's really looking at all of these factors, not just the course of study, but participation in extracurricular activities, considering bringing in other agencies and other supports, identifying liaisons to kind of help carry into that transition. And then where are the linkages between the agencies? So this is such important work, and it pains us to hear anecdotal stories of students who are done with school and they're like on the couch for a couple of years before they get going because they're just in this limbo for a while. And that's what we want to avoid. We really want to avoid. Tying into what Susan talked about around person-centered IEP meetings, person-centered approaches to students with disabilities, we fund through the Boggs Center at Rutgers University, which is the New Jersey State Center for Excellence in Developmental Disability Education and Research. The Boggs Center has a program called Person-Centered Approaches to School and Transition. They have 3 specialists. This has grown. Michael Steinbrook started this years ago by himself. Summerlee Monahan came on board, and the program is now expanded to a 3rd specialist. And we train districts in creating positive student-centered IEP meetings. And some of you may say, well, that's great, but my son or daughter may not be ready to run their own IEP meeting yet. But the idea here is not necessarily that the student has to run their own IEP meeting, but that the focus of the IEP meeting, the entire planning process into transition, is really centered around that student. It's focused on their needs, and they have an opportunity to articulate those needs, whether verbal or nonverbal. They have an opportunity for everyone in that room to come together with the key needs of that student and the strengths of that student. That was something else that came out in our first 2 presentations. What I tell districts all the time is, if we're not focused on strengths, then we're not going to address those needs because those strengths are what we use. Those are the tools we use to address the needs. So if we're not focused on strengths, we have a lot of work to do. We have to reshift the mindset. Getting back to the PCAST before I go, but getting back to PCAST, this is a training program for school districts. However, if you're active in your district CPAG and your district's not aware of it, please make them aware of it, and they can participate in these trainings. And then once they get trained, you can volunteer as a parent. If the district's been trained, you can volunteer and say, I want one of these student-centered IEP meetings. I'll be the guinea pig, or I'll be the person that would participate in these meetings. I'll say a lot of those giant wall-sized Post-it notes are involved. There's a lot of writing, a lot of articulating, a lot of teaming, and it's truly a collaborative process. I mentioned community-based instruction. This program has done an amazing job working with districts, and I was incredibly impressed at their work during COVID, because how can you have community-based instruction when you can't go into the community? And a lot of some of the students who were participating in CBI programs had especially like immunocompromised students, they had needs that really delayed their ability to go back into the communities. And our CBI trainers did an amazing job of bringing the communities to them, whether it be virtual online communities, whether it be finding opportunities to participate in communities of practice so that school districts can share ideas. And what happened from those communities of practice that happened were created during COVID is we've continued them now. And we've created communities of practice around various areas in special education, so that we're not just talking at school districts and training them, we're facilitating conversations with each other so that districts who are doing really great work can help affect other districts. And then some districts that are doing great work in another area can affect other districts. So it's kind of making spreading the wealth and creating a shared community among our districts in best practice and evidence-based practice. New Jersey Positive Behavior Support in Schools, it comes out of our office, but it is a school-wide project. So we train about 30 schools a year. We have over 200 schools in the state of New Jersey implementing this. This is a proactive approach to prevent significant above average suspensions of students with disabilities in certain districts and schools, and expulsion of students with disabilities out of, things like really creating behavioral supports in the school environment, so that a lot of our students with disabilities who may have behavioral needs can be served in the least restrictive environment. Their website is fantastic as well. I didn't highlight it in this particular presentation because the PBSIS website parent resource section is being currently under construction because it's being moved or relocated from a different website. Long story short, kind of amusing, New Jersey PBS, like Channel 13, there was a little dispute over their website URL. So that's why it's going on. They came to a resolution. If you have not been to one of our learning resource centers, these are open to parents. We have parent memberships. We have 4 locations. I say 4, 3 open, 1 coming soon. One is in East Orange, 7 Glenwood Avenue in East Orange, New Jersey. One at 200 Riverview Plaza in Trenton. One at Rowan University, which is in the south. So we have north, central, and south. And we have a satellite that is sort of northwest New Jersey, which is coming soon to William Patterson University. We had our first in-person workshop at William Patterson yesterday. And we have this cozy space upstairs at the 3rd floor of 1600 Valley Road, where we're looking to maybe convert it into a parent education center, actually, has some couches and some resources, but also opportunities to have some sort of intimate parent meetings and support and educational opportunities for those parents. And the nice thing about partnering with universities is we get to tap their expertise and some of their professors as well.
Dr. Petino, it's Dottie Blakesley. We're coming
sorry.
up. No, we're coming up on 12, but your presentation is terrific, as were the other presentations. Would it be possible for you to, and Cathy and Susan, to stay beyond 12? Because some of the questions coming up in the Q&A are really good ones.
Okay. Yes,
could you
I
stay after
can.
12?
I can stay, and I'll
you.
also speed up the rest of my presentation to make
It's
sure.
great stuff. Okay.
And here's the thing. I mean, I'm kind of talking through and explaining all of this, but the links are here. You can take your time and explore. On each slide, you can kind of explore each link as you go through. So, as I mentioned before, we have a partnership with SPAN, and they come out and help train special ed parent advisory groups. Now, on the compliance side in New Jersey, it is required that every school district has a CPAG, a special ed parent advisory group. However, there are not requirements around, like, for lack of a better term, the quality of that CPAG. As long as they have one, that satisfies the state requirement. So what we try to do with our work with SPAN is to help promote quality engagement with parents and quality parent voice, opportunities for parent voice and parent interaction, collaboration, really. So we understand that there's a lot of variability throughout the state. We have two main projects, big projects that are statewide around inclusion. One thing we do not do well in the state of New Jersey is include students with disabilities in the gen ed environment for 80% of the day or more. It's a metric it's a measure that we're judged on by the federal government, and we do not do well in that metric. So we have brought in some experts from New Jersey Coalition for Inclusive Education, as well as Montclair State University, to help us with these issues by developing not only training modules for all districts, but also working intensively what we call transformational work with a select number of districts that we can learn from to scale up to entire statewide practices. Again, lots of recent additions here. The big news, which some of you may have heard of in the disability community, is Joanne Johnson and myself and a number of people wrote a successful application for a grant all around transition services and vocational rehabilitation services. And starting October 1st, which is tomorrow, we will be able to start rolling out planning activities around this grant. We have a 1-year planning period, and then years 2 through 5 are implementing opportunities for the focus of the grant is interstate agency collaboration. So there's 2 parts to the grant that we proposed. One is a transition hub for all parents and students and educators to go to that brings together all of the agencies in an understandable way. So if you have a student who's 12 years old and it'll say, I am a parent, and you click on parent and it'll say, how old is your student? 12. And then it'll give you resources that are relevant for a 12-year-old and what agencies to connect with and what those resources look like. So it's really kind of like a concierge. I feel like we have a lot of resources, but no one to guide you through it. So that's our goal, is to have that sort of transition hub, modeling off of some states like Tennessee. They have a website called Transition Tennessee. And the other part of that is 3 sites, which we've identified 3 school districts in New Jersey that we're going to do really close work with, again, to study that and then scale it up to the rest of the state. So stay informed. I'll just say this. There's a link here to our broadcasts. These broadcasts are intended for school district staff for the most part, but it's a great opportunity for you to stay up to date on any changing policies, or sometimes to stay up to date on learning opportunities that are offered. Again, the focus of the broadcast is mostly school staff, so there may be things there that you don't find as relevant or not interesting, but it is a good way to keep in touch with new laws that may be passed or new information sessions that come out. And the last one I'll just talk about is if you go to the Special Education in Action newsletters, every quarter, every 3 months, we put out what's happening in the Office of Special Education, as well as throughout the state. We highlight at least one program that is a best practice or an exemplar program. And then I'll wrap up with other contact information. We have a state special education ombudsman. Her name's Cynthia Haynes-Sandin. Her contact information is here, email address and phone number. I can't even remember how many phone calls she answered last year. It was well over 800 to 1,000 phone calls from parents and outreach. Our office email address is here, Office of Special Ed, OSE info email address. And then we have social media sites, as you can see here. And the last thing is my email and contact information is also included on the slides. So thank you guys so much for your time. I know we want to get to questions.